the two words that we haven't touched on today is, in the topic, resilience and generosity. And we're not going to start with that. But we are going to be talking about happiness now. Resilience through happiness, and being generous as part of happiness, or being happy as part of generosity. Whatever you can think about that. And I like Professor Arthur Brooks' theory of happiness. It works with Buddhist meditation and psychology. The one word that the one focus that I have been working on these days is called mudita in Pali. Mudita. We did that with the kids earlier to focus on their hard work in getting them through difficult times, and ask them to recognize their own effort to reconnect with the process. Sometimes the word mudita, M-U-D-I-T-A, mudita, the word is translated as rejoice. Maybe sometimes it means that. But the word recognition of effort sounds better here. What's the basis of happiness? According to Professor Arthur Brooks, is what he calls the red pill of humility. That's the title of his article in the Atlantics. The red pill of humility. In English, you call the red pill. In Burmese, we call sekaji. Something we don't want to have, but is good for us. In Burmese, we believe if you take something bitter, it's good for your health. So we have soup called seka in Burmese. Bitter soup. Bitter soup. That's how literally we can translate it. And it's good for health. What does it mean? It means we accept our limit. We accept our weakness. In DNA, you might have heard of Richard Dawkins, professor of DNA at Oxford. His PhD thesis is called Selfish Gene. Only selfish genes survive, he said. That's the mother nature, the survival of the fittest. But you only exist. You survive and you exist. Maybe you don't live. To live, you really need to accept some weaknesses, some limitation. By doing so, ironically, it makes you stronger as a community. When we accept that we can't do things alone, then we look for people. We look for other people to work together. This is, the word that we use, that we take it for granted every day. Company means many people. It doesn't mean one individual. Community, country, even business, Everything indicates, collective strength. A team. You can talk about all kinds of sports. The overwhelming majority of them are team sports. So we are going to watch some video clip, maybe 2 or 3 of Professor Arthur Brooks. The first one is Harvard Professor Arthur Brooks on the science of happiness. Harvard Professor Arthur Brooks on the science of happiness.
It is Monday on CBS Mornings, so you know what that means. It's time for Beg Knows America. See what we did there? We find the heart in every single story. For this week's story, contributor David Begnaud was in our studio to bring us a lesson on the science of happiness.
Today we're learning how to live happier, and what you are about to hear is backed up by research. Our guest is Professor of Happiness, Arthur Brooks. Arthur is a best-selling author and columnist who studies the science of happiness at Harvard University. His work has inspired the likes of Oprah, Matthew McConaughey, Presidents Barack Obama and George W. Bush, and people all over the country, like David Cornbrooks from Arlington, Virginia. He says Arthur's writing helped him find meaning in the face of a heartbreaking diagnosis.
A little over 2 years ago, after sort of a dull pain in my rib, sharp pain in my chest, went to the doctor, found out that I was stage 4 lung cancer. I didn't know that you could get lung cancer without having smoked before. I don't think I dealt with that initial shock right away. And, I kind of went back to my regular life, probably a little bit of denial. Same thing happened. My dad passed away when I was a senior in high school. Same kind of avoidance or denial of what was a pretty intense time as an 18-year-old, and then now a pretty intense time as a 40-year-old with, 2 young kids. Arthur Brooks came around at a time when I was ready and open to really feel what he was saying. The piece that really resonated was in The Atlantic, and it was called The Red Pill of Humility, and that's sort of the full acceptance of the truth about yourself. I was trying to hide these things that may not look perfect, and kind of leaned into vulnerability afterwards. I think before the diagnosis, I cried maybe a handful of times in my whole life. I think that's part of the expansion of the emotional band. I've cried probably a dozen or more times alone with my wife, around my kids. I think I live a deeper, more rich lifestyle now.
Arthur Brooks, welcome to Times Square.
Thank you, David.
Hearing that, how does that make you feel?
My heart goes out, but that's why I do my work. The truth of the matter is that everybody has suffering in their life. And what we can look forward to, if we're lucky, is to find meaning in that suffering and to share our lives with other people in a way that meaning can come to them as well. And that's exactly what he's doing. He's actually turned this terrible diagnosis in his life from one of terror and one of pain and one of sadness into one of inspiration, one of teaching for other people, one of sharing. And that's one of the great secrets in life.
He talks about the red pill of humility.
Yeah.
An article you wrote for The Atlantic. What is the red pill of humility?
The red pill of humility is that we don't want to be humble. We want to hold ourselves up as strong. We want to look to other people as if we don't have terrible things happening in our lives. Here's the paradox, David. Mother Nature really doesn't care if we're happy. Mother Nature wants us to survive and pass on our genes. And so she imprints these behaviors in us that are not optimal, that are not the best, like make yourself look better than other people, focus only on yourself. And when you fight against that, you find that the secret to being fully alive, the secret to becoming a happier person, is sometimes doing the opposite. When you want to hold yourself up as strong, sometimes you need to admit that you're weak. When you feel something that's making you sad, you need to go look for somebody else who's suffering and relieve their sadness, as opposed to focusing on your self-care.
Oh, that speaks to me. I'm telling you, when I am going through a funk, the way to get myself out of it is to look for something I can do in service to someone else.
It's amazing. It's amazing. You know, one of the things I've done a lot of research on loneliness, for example. When you're feeling lonely, the cure, the immediate cure, it'll switch it off, is to go find somebody who's lonely and relieve their solitude, relieve their isolation.
Amen.
It's amazing. It's the same thing as anything else. If you want more of something, give it away. Mother Nature doesn't tell you that, but that's a cosmic truth.
You've got a formula for happiness?
Yeah.
So tell me this, what plus what will equal happiness?
Yeah, happiness is not a feeling, and this is an important thing to keep in mind. Happiness is a combination of enjoyment of your life, satisfaction with your accomplishments, and a sense of the meaning of your existence. Enjoyment plus satisfaction plus meaning. Work on those and watch well-being rise.
Amen to the meaning. What is the connection between meaning and happiness?
Meaning is a part of happiness. It's one macronutrient. It's one element of happiness. Meaning is really why things happen the way they do, the goals and direction in your life, and why your life matters. And the way to think about this, I have two questions I can ask anybody who's watching us to know whether or not they have a sense of proper meaning in their life.
What are those?
Number one, what's your answer to why am I alive? The way to pass that test is to have an answer. The way to fail is to go,
I don't know.
Second question, for what would you gladly give your life on this day? And if the answer is nothing, that's a problem. A sense of meaning is having an affirmative answer that's written on your heart to those two questions. And if people are watching us, they don't know, that's good news, because this tells you what to go in search of. Go in search of the answers to those two questions, and a miracle will happen in your life.
You started researching happiness because you wanted to be happier.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So what have you learned through your research that's made you happier?
So I'm a behavioral scientist, but I always kind of viewed happiness like astronomy. Like, an astronomer doesn't think he's going to change the stars. He's going to study the stars. And that's how I looked at happiness. Until I was in my 50s, when my wife said, it's kind of ironic that you study happiness, but you're not a happy person. I said, yeah. She said, why don't you actually see whether or not you can change your own? That's weird. That's like a surgeon trying to take out his own appendix. Right? It's like, good luck with that. But I set about doing it. So I learned everything that I could, which is my career. I changed my habits, and then I started teaching a class on it at Harvard, and my life started to change. It's really true. David, I'm 60% happier than I was 5 years ago. That's a lot.
There's a science behind it.
There is.
Thanks for telling us more about it.
Thank you, David.
God, I want more, I want more. David joins us now from North Carolina, where he's shooting another story. David, I enjoyed this conversation so much. Number one, I have great respect for Arthur Brooks and the work that he does. Everybody has suffering. The mission is to find meaning, happiness, energy, satisfaction, and meaning. I learned so much just in that short segment. What was your big takeaway from that conversation?
Mine would be, Gail, that happiness is not some kind of fleeting emotion, that it's a tangible thing that we can actively cultivate through enjoyment, satisfaction, and purpose. So if we look at happiness that way, then we can transform it to be something that we can actively work on to build better, happier lives for ourselves.
Yes, we can all do that, too. David, thank you so much. That was so good.
Good stuff.
If you have a story for David, you can reach him and his team at deardavid@cbsnews.com. We'll be right back.
The heart of
It is money.
The heart of Buddhist philosophy, Four Noble Truths of Disalipa, begin with a statement: there is suffering. We can also modify it: there is limitation. It confronts our instinct straight away. I don't have suffering. That's the first reaction that we have. The Mother Nature, he said, wants to imprint a habit of the survival instinct, the survival of the fittest, the strongest. As a result, we have to compete. We have to compete. We survive, we exist, but we don't live. We don't live a happier life. So to acknowledge that there is suffering, the red pill of humility, is actually good to get a happier life. We are afraid of accepting this because we think we are unique. Suffering is unique to us when we acknowledge it. We want to be unique with our success. I have gone through this, a hard time, and we want to make our experience unique as well. When you make yourself unique, what do? You isolate yourself. If you become so unique in this room, you become only one and the only one person with that experience. You feel good for a little while, but that leads you to isolation. It's either success or failure. We want to feel unique. When I have a hard time, when you comfort me, if you recognize that this pain is terrible, oh, okay, you are such an unfortunate person. If you acknowledge that, I feel good. But if you tell me, come on, get strong, this is unique to, no, this is common to everyone. If you say that, I don't like you. But it goes against my subconscious reaction. But the cosmic reality is that limitation we all have. And that means limitation is common. That commonality, common experiences, in Pali is called anatta. Anatta means common. Limitation means dukkha. So dukkha is common to everyone. So dukkha is anatta. So I'm using the Pali word. It's such a relief to know that my problem is not unique to me. Such a relief. No, the problem that you face in your company is not unique to actually. It's something that you can't find everywhere. It's such a relief. Such a relief. You are no longer isolated with that problem anymore. You see? Being unique and isolation. Being common and being connected. We talked about interconnectedness earlier, interdependence. I exist, but I don't really need to be unique to feel good. At the beginning, okay, we need to feel unique. That is why in psychology, self-esteem goes that way. It promotes self-identity. But these days, in psychology, they say self-esteem has a lot of side effects. Self-compassion is better. Self-compassion recognizes the shortcoming, and it's okay to have this shortcoming. You don't really need to be perfect to be happy. No one is perfect. We don't really need to wait until we have perfection to start feeling good, to start feeling happy. All we need to do is the red pill of humility, accept that. Okay, life is not perfect and it doesn't have to be. We never sign an agreement before we were born, life will be perfect. In the three components of happiness that he mentioned, enjoyment and satisfaction, they are related to the exercise I do with people often, mudita. That is to look at positive side of your life. Then another one, meaning, okay, in whatever we do. That's to think what we do until we come to realize it's meaningful. It's meaningful. And how meaningful is it? Here, I like to distinguish happiness from pleasure. Pleasure is dependent on a lot of external things. It's short-lived. Short-lived. But happiness, as you can see in the research now, is about feeling mindful with our work, with what we do, with what we dedicate ourselves to. With that meaning, with that sense of purpose, we will enjoy doing our work. And then when we look back what we have done, it doesn't matter the percentage of success. We will feel satisfied because we know we have done our best. So here, according to Professor Arthur Brooks, meaning is having a sense of service to the wider community. A cleaner thinks that he's contributing to somebody landing on the moon. You can't deny that. You can't deny that. A teacher can claim the same, can see the same. A parent can feel the same. A business person, a food producer can say that because, all those astronauts, they also rely on food. They live on food, just like anyone. A banker can claim the same because, banking is important everywhere, for every sector. A pilot, an air crew, they can all share the same statement. A doctor, an engineer, everybody. A sense of service that we did in the morning. It makes whatever we do meaningful. So many of you are being a parent. If you look at that way, raising your child as a contribution to the society. Yeah. As individual, you are contributing to the society now because your parents have done their job as good father, as good mother. So one day, if your kid makes a contribution to the society, that's because you have raised them very well. We are going to look at one more video. I think two more. What's behind the drop in happiness among Americans?
By the way, how are you feeling this morning? Yes, you. Happy? Not so much? Well, new polling shows happiness levels in the U.S. are on the decline, and it is especially prevalent in people under 30. Take a look at this curve. Historically, happiness is high when you're young. Then the deep, dark valley comes before happiness increases again, thankfully, with older age. But new research shows a shift in this happiness curve, largely based on Gallup polling. So the left side of the U-shape is when people are younger, and that shows happiness starting out much lower and staying below the norm before eventually increasing. And this happiness decline isn't happening in a vacuum. Researchers also found that people between the ages of 18 and 29 report struggling with meaning and purpose, their health, developing close relationships, and financial security. So what's behind the rise in unhappiness, and can anything be done about it? Paging Arthur Brooks for help. He is a social scientist, happiness author, and host of the How to Build a Happy Life podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
So, what is happening? Because, we can understand why people have a lot of happiness when they're younger, but now we're seeing younger people with less happiness than before. What's happening?
So typically what has happened until relatively recent history is that people actually have a lot of enjoyment early on in life. And that kind of wanes a little bit when you start having kids and paying a mortgage and have a lot of pressure at work. And life is great as far as it goes, but then happiness picks back up again in your 50s, which I didn't know. By the time I got into my 50s, I said, "Oh,
yeah, finally get it."
Coincidentally, might coincide with the kids moving out. But what we find lately is there's a new pattern emerging, which is that younger people don't have that bliss in their 20s. You find that they actually have higher rates of clinical depression, higher rates of generalized anxiety, and we actually know why. Which is they're having a harder and harder time answering the question, what's the meaning of my life? Which is amazing when you think about it. It's such a big philosophical question.
And that question has existed since the beginning of time.
Exactly right.
So why are younger people today struggling with that question?
Well, normally
others hadn't.
Well, you can't answer that question perfectly. It sort of eludes the words.
Right.
But what you find is that people were doing things in their life that gave them the sense of meaning that they're not doing today. There's really 5 things that people do in their lives that gives them a sense of meaning. They fall in love. They worship or follow some sort of serious life philosophy. They find a calling in their work. They understand beauty, especially in nature, and that they understand that suffering is a sacred thing, that suffering is a normal thing. And what you find today is people are less likely to fall in love. They're less likely to worship in a traditional, at least traditional religious faith. They're less likely to say that their work is a calling. They're less likely to be out in nature, and they're trying to eliminate their suffering as opposed to growing and understanding what the meaning of their suffering is.
So, Arthur, it does sound as if a lot of these causes could be alleviated by removing yourself from the internet or removing yourself from social media, only because a lot of the things that you say, for example, finding meaning in your work. If your work is being an influencer, it may make you a lot of money. But what is the true meaning in becoming an influencer and living your life entirely on social media? If you're not getting outdoors, or if you're not building a relationship, I've had young women.
Because you're doing this.
Remember, I did a story on dating in now in 2025. This young woman told me she can't even meet guys because guys are still living at home and afraid to approach women because they don't know how to talk to them.
And apps actually don't generally lead you to the kinds of relationships that are most compatible with what you're actually looking for. There's more dates and less attraction when we're actually intermediating that on apps.
I have lived that. Yeah.
I have lived it, but you got through it.
I did.
She did.
Really important.
And then I met someone off the app.
Really?
Yes.
You met your husband not on the app?
Yeah.
We were basically arranged by our families.
That's the way it's supposed to be.
I met my wife the old-fashioned way, which was a friend introduced us at a party.
Yeah.
But plenty of people meet on the apps and get married.
They do, but it's a harder way to actually fall in love because actually it doesn't have that complexity to it. It actually, what you're doing is you're reducing the complex experience of falling in love to a complicated algorithm, and it's not the same. There's no mystery in that. And we find meaning in mystery. That's how humans are actually wired.
Meaning in
I
mystery.
knew it.
Meaning in mystery.
That's actually right. And the mysterious parts of life. And look, we know the neurochemistry out of this works
That ties
too.
into all of your 5 things.
Yeah.
Because there's mystery in love, there's mystery in nature, there's
all of
mystery
it.
in
calling,
in your calling.
suffering, nature and beauty.
The
It's
suffering
all
I don't
mystery.
quite understand.
No, the suffering.
Why do we want to
in fact, I've always said that.
or appreciate suffering?
Of course.
I've always said that you gain an understanding and a deeper appreciation of life when you suffer.
Yeah.
The title of my book is going to be Thankful for the Pain, because you embrace the suffering and you embrace the pain because it leads to an enlightenment.
Yeah, exactly. If I asked either one of you, tell me when you really understood, you can't articulate it exactly, tell me when you understood the meaning of your life. You wouldn't say that week at the beach in Ibiza.
Yeah.
You would, no, you would actually talk about when my mother died, when I was afraid, when things were falling apart and I persevered. There's something about suffering that's unbelievably sacred, and we have an approach to suffering, especially for people under 30, that says if you're depressed or anxious or sad, it means something's broken and wrong. Well, let me tell you, life on earth has a lot of suffering to it. If you're not depressed and anxious ever, then you need therapy.
Wow, really, really interesting. Thank you, Arthur Brooks, as always. That was today's By the Way.
Complexities and sophistication, he twisted them and to articulate what he meant. Complexities in life are nature, normal, to be expected. Going through them, makes you stronger. And you understand by this point why I asked the kids earlier to focus on difficult questions that they had solved. By doing that, of course, at the moment, they have to recall long memory. It may be a little bit difficult for them. As a parent, if you do that, just maybe after a week or so, and you have the evidence in your hand. Okay, look, this was really hard for you and for me to go through this math question. But look, you spend how many hours, this and this, how many days, how many weeks, and now that process has taken you here. You are better with this. As a parent, as a teacher, as manager, as a leader, if you do this, your staff, your team member, your student, your kids, they are going to feel resilient under pressure. With that resiliency, they will exist, or they will live even a more generous person towards themselves and towards other people. Because resiliency affects generosity. When we are not generous anymore, our resiliency also drops. So the Buddha goes to the heart of cosmic truth. Cosmic truth is the word of Professor Arthur Brooks. The Buddha goes to the heart of the cosmic truth when he says, there is suffering. A statement is called, there is suffering. He didn't say, I suffer. He removed the person in that. He was just making a pure statement. There is limitation. In his first sermon. In his second sermon, he repeated that by saying that limitation is common to all. If we accept our limit, okay, there are many opportunities to do business, this. But I'm going to limit my energy to this particular business. I'm going to work on this. See, you become a lot better, more focused, more concentrated, more manageable. more manageable. By accepting our limit, we actually become stronger. The paradox, you know. So it's very hard to understand what the Buddha said at the beginning, how working on suffering leads to enlightenment, leads to wisdom, leads to compassion. It's difficult to see. But now, with a lot of neuroscience research and also psychology, especially positive psychology research, it's a lot easier to see now. And it's a problem-based approach. The Buddha would go to the problem straight away and base his approach on problems, so problem-based learning. One last video clip with Oprah Winfrey. There's Oprah Winfrey and other bros collaborate on happiness. Let's observe that one. Yeah.
No matter how old we are, at the end of the day, most of us just want to be happy. But what does happy mean? Oprah Winfrey went looking for answers, and as Nora O'Donnell tells us, she turned to one of the pros.
How long have human beings been chasing happiness?
How long have human beings been walking the earth?
Arthur Brooks' life mission is sharing what he's learned about happiness with the world. In fact, it's what the Harvard professor is paid to do.
So your day job is teaching happiness at Harvard.
Yeah.
How did that get on the syllabus?
The secret to happiness is actually teaching happiness. That's the reason I do it, is because it's not research, it's me-search.
To his great surprise, his lessons reached far beyond the classroom, to include one star student.
How did you find Arthur Brooks?
During the pandemic, I was in search of fuel to keep myself inspired, to keep myself open to possibility, to keep myself hopeful. I started reading his column in The Atlantic and then looking more and more forward to that column on how to build life.
So that's when Oprah Winfrey decided to personally reach out to Arthur Brooks.
The first time you picked up the phone and you hear a voice on the other line say, "This is Oprah," what did you think?
Well, I said, yeah, and I'm Batman.
But it was Oprah, and she invited him over for dinner.
And I'm thinking, what happened to my life? You know, I'm just a college professor who fell off the turnip truck in front of Oprah Winfrey's tea house.
He is the perfect person to have for dinner because you just probe his brain about all the things you've ever wanted to ask about your own emotions and searching for happiness and well-being and all of that. So I am the kind of person, as you know, that believes that life is better when you share it, whether that's bread or information.
To share that information, they hatched a plan to co-author a book.
It's pretty nice when Oprah says, "Let's write a book together."
It's not the worst thing that can happen to you in your life as an author, that's for sure.
The book builds itself as a guide to getting happier, and the formula is not what you might think.
I'm going to tick off a few things that people may associate with happiness. So you tell me yes or no if they are necessary for a happy life. Money.
No.
Fame.
No, double no.
Power.
No.
Good looks.
Nope.
None of them.
None of them.
But if you were an alien and landed on Earth, and specifically in America, and looked at social media, you would think that the way to happiness is money, fame, power, and good looks.
Yeah, social media is this laboratory for the earthly goals that actually make you miserable.
Everybody is looking at other people's social media, what they believe to be other people's lives, which is only a snapshot of other people's lives, and feeling envy about that. And one of the things that Arthur and I talk about in this book is that envy is the great destroyer.
The happiness killer.
It is the happiness killer.
Oprah says she's had a front row seat to people's quest for happiness after 25 years on TV, interviewing more than 37,000 people.
Every day, I would sit and talk with the audience, and most people would always just say, well, I just want to be happy. I just want to be happy. Well, what does that look like?
Define it. Define happiness.
Define it. What I realize is that most people have never defined it. And then they'd say, well, I want my kids to be happy. Well, that's your kids, but what do you want? And so being able to answer specifically what that looks like for you is the beginning of being happier.
All happiness is a combination of enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning. That's what we need. We need to enjoy our lives, which is not the same thing as pleasure. You know, the pursuit of pleasure will lead you to addiction and misery. Enjoyment adds in people and memories, which is the reason that beer ads never have a guy alone pounding a 12-pack in his apartment, but rather they have him with friends because they want it to be the source of enjoyment. Satisfaction is the joy that we get after a struggle, because humans are made to struggle and to achieve. And meaning is the hardest one. Meaning is the sense of coherence. You know, things happen for a reason. Direction and purpose. There's a reason for the things that are happening in my life, and there's a reason for my life.
What makes you happy in daily life?
So many things. Nature makes me joyous and so much happier.
Along with nature walks, Oprah also loves bread.
Oh my God, what?
Bread!
Which is why we met her at the Amy's Bread Cafe in the Museum of the City of New York.
Olive fresh baked is always my favorite. Any of that here?
I know, right here.
Okay. Wow.
As for Arthur's happy place, it's the gym in his basement, where you'll find him every day at 5 a.m.
You measure out your...
Coffee rounds out the morning ritual.
How much is habit important in happiness?
It's important to actually have a routine for what you're trying to do to set your day up in the right way. Structuring your day is critically important.
Another thing that's important, accepting unhappiness as part of life.
The truth is, all of us have suffering in our lives. The job is not to eradicate the suffering, it is to grow and learn from the suffering, because it is part of our life's journey. That is part of what it means to be fully alive. You can't be happy unless you're also unhappy.
You cannot control all of the external circumstances in your life, but you can control how you feel about those circumstances in your life. It boils down to the thing that I do when I go to teach in South Africa to my girls. I always teach a class called Life 101. And at the end of that class, I leave them with the poem Invictus. The last lines are, I'm the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul. And so taking control of your emotions and not allowing your emotions to control you, taking the wheel, allows you to be the master of your fate and the captain of your soul.
I love Invictus, and if I had on short sleeve shirts, you would see my goosebumps.
Really?
Oprah and Arthur have charted a course for happiness, and what seems to make them happiest is teaching others all about it.
Any standout memories from writing the book together?
Well, everything with Oprah Winfrey is a standout memory. I mean, it's...
Arthur says you make him happy. Does he make you happy?
He makes me happy. I just look at his bald head and I just get happy. I look at that peanut head and I just makes me smile.
We're going to do meditation based on this. It's an adaptation of Buddhist meditation to this science of happiness. We do the same thing as we did with the kids. You are going to try to reconnect with difficult issues that you have solved in the past. Think about 2 or 3 of them, one after another. Trying to go into details, the feeling, the pressure, the ups and downs, the mood swing, maybe disappointment, maybe frustration, maybe the words you spoke, and some of it you regret, whatever. You just go through those. Unedited. Just trying to live through them once more. 1 or 2 or 3 events of the past. That's for yourself. That's for your resilience. And for the generosity part, trying to do the same with the people you know. Maybe in your family, and maybe in your friends, in your company, whatever, is up to you to choose. The goal is, though, to connect with the people we usually think unrelated to us, in terms of business, in terms of in terms of blood relation, in terms of belief, in terms of maybe life philosophy. That's the goal, but we don't have that much time for that today. In simple exercise, first focus on yourself. This is intra-personal awareness. And then you focus on other people, the inter-personal awareness. The two combined is called emotional intelligence in Daniel Goleman's definition. Okay, we meditate now. We do reflection. We do this for about 12 minutes. Feel free to allow yourself to connect with breathing, to center yourself, and then start working on this exercise. Trying to link to some of the hard times in the past that you remember very well. Their emotional impact, maybe social and economic consequences as well. But you have gone through them. dedicate some of your times to recognizing how other people have gone through some of the hardest times in their lives as well. Okay, it's 12 minutes now. When you recognize as a parent your children's having gone through certain difficult question, certain hard time, that's generosity. If you recognize yourself, you are being generous towards yourself, that's self-compassion. So generosity is about compassion. Recognizing the good point, strong point. Yeah. But even the attitude of humility, recognizing our limitation, our shortcoming, is still part of wisdom. It makes us stronger, not weaker. With a short exercise, you could see the kids earlier, they all felt good. If we repeat this again and again on a regular basis, they would never shy away from hard questions. They wouldn't give things up easily. That's resilience. And resilience is related to growth mindset, is related to positive thinking, mudita, is related to accepting the attitude of humility. In the philosophy and psychology of the law of interdependence or the dependent origination, resilience doesn't exist on its own. Instead, it's interrelated with any other qualities. The same with motivation, the same with performance, the same with result. Result is related to process. And other books were saying research became me-search. Research, me-search, because he was trying to look into himself. Intra-personal awareness. Me-search. When we see ourselves as separate from other people now, we lose sight of the interdependence, the dependent origination. In conclusion, whatever concept we have touched upon today, mindfulness, attitude of humility, positive thinking, growth mindset, everything is interrelated. Multiple causes contributing to, one or a certain event, certain results. And there's no permanent cause, there's no permanent results. A sadness, for example, as the result of something, and sadness as the cause of something else. In Burmese, a jaung kanda, a jo kanda. A jaung vedana, a jo vedana. There's no permanent cause. There's no permanent result. in the creationist theology, the creator is the permanent cause, the creature, the permanent result. But Buddhist philosophy would think, actually asserts that cause and effect, they are interrelated. Cause become effect, effect become cause. Depending on times and space and the environment of condition. So that philosophy of conditionality in Myanmar is very popular. It's called patana, conditionality. I'm not going to talk about this today, just to throw around, what we study in this country, the law of interdependence and the law of conditionality, pattern, and the law of dependent origination or interdependent Bodhisattva movement. So I think I should stop here and listen to you now. If you have any question, comments, or reflection. Who would like to start?
Hello. Pompong, when I practice resilience and generosity, right? Because you mentioned about being positive, because usually you pick up on negative thoughts. So I try to do compassionate meditation when I do, and but then sometimes when an incident occurs, like I would still think about the negative effects, right? And then even though if I'm practicing compassionate, like I feel like I'm always in that maze, like I don't get any better, but also at the same time you mentioned they're all interrelated. So how can I improve on being more compassionate than being negative?
Repetition is the cause. Repetition becomes a habit. And here, repetition of what? Repetition of negative thoughts. What we are trying to do here is repetition of positive thoughts. Just to change the habit. And you can calculate that very easily. The investment you put in terms of time investment you put in, for negative repetition and for positive repetition. Usually, subconsciously, we repeat negative things. We are negativity biased. Negativity bias. That's how the brain is wired. And it can be changed. It can be changed. There is a book called Hardwiring by Rick Hansen from Berkeley. Hardwiring. It doesn't take that long. If you accumulate about 30 hours, less than 2 days, but we can't work 24 hours. We need some rest. Okay. at work, at the dining table, and when you have a chair, when you have a shower, trying to infuse some positive thinking into that. By recognizing your own effort to be there, to be in a nice warm shower. And then recognize other people like the engineers, the water engineers, all sorts of engineers, their role. Give them maybe about a minute, maybe half a minute. And during your meal time, dedicate maybe about a minute to those people, just count the ingredients, just count the vegetables, just count the things on the plate. And that they come from different places to serve you, to be there for you. You see, atomic habit. You want to change big things, and do small things. Do small things. That would change your life. And you have a daughter. Other Brooks was saying earlier, many people, they live in the future. They spend 30 to 50% of their time worrying about the future. That they are not being alive here. You might be thinking about the future, and you use that as an incentive, for you also as a mother. Actually, sometimes we can overdo it. We forget to celebrate, to recognize what the child is doing. When we don't do that, the older one, because I work with them in international school, in private school, in state school, and kids, they complain that their parents always compare them with other kids, and that's not fair. The parents have good intention, they want to motivate their kids, but they're doing it in a way that has a lot of side effect. It demoralizes the kids. So if you focus on the hard question, the difficult homework project question that they have done on a weekly basis, and that would be good enough an incentive. If we want to compete, because we can avoid competing, we should avoid competing with people. Instead, we should compete with issue, with difficult issue, with difficulty. Take on difficult issues, difficult problem that human beings face. Okay, malaria is coming back in some places. If you want to go for that, you need a big investment, and at the end, you're going to have a big return. But if you're not interested in that, what are you interested on? There are many problems you can choose from. You start working on that. Anyway, whatever business you are engaged in, your business solve people's problem. If you look at that way, it's more meaningful. More meaningful. So even negative issues, we can look at that positively. When the Buddha talks about suffering, the positive thing is that he thinks it's not unique to anyone and it can be solved. These are the positive things. When you realize that you have repetitious negative thoughts, that in itself is a good news, because you know what to work on.
Well, when that happens, then I recognize it and I said, 地, but then I switch on to another negative one. So how do I improve on that?
You have to start your day with a positive thinking. Give yourself 1 minute. As you wake up, okay, when there's no mindfulness, you just let negative thoughts flooding in. You see? And you start the day with a lot of negative thoughts without realizing it. So as we wake up in the morning, give yourself a minute. Don't get up straight away. Give yourself a minute. And make sure that the first waking minute is positive. Try to relate to something nice. Okay, yesterday I did my best for this. This week I did my best for this. This week I went through this, I solved this problem. Or I learned this. Whatever. Or you can also see something positive in other people. That would include generosity. I mean, if you think positively about yourself, that's also being generous. Sometimes we only know generosity in terms of figure, in terms of money. But in terms of emotion, being generous towards ourselves, this is really important. We can't put a figure on this. So when you wake up in the morning, when you have a change, when you have breakfast, when you go to work, whatever happens around you, you can always find something positive and dedicate your time for 1 minute. And that small things, okay. The Indian author Mrs. Roy said that's the God of small things. Atomic habit. You want to change big things, start changing the small things. Enlightenment, a big one, is combined, is actually a collection of many tiny moments of effort, mindful moments.
This reflection and also the question, I think that the reflection would be that read a book recently that it's about the new brain science, but it's just about all the emotion that we feel are kind of like a chemical feedback. Those chemical feedbacks tend to feed into our genes, and we have a blueprint of the genes, but not all genes are expressed. So when you have these continuous chemical feedbacks, the genes tend to be expressed more strongly and over time. And the growth mindset, the positive thinkings, and the visualizations, and so on, will continue to have in a way so that our brains are more hardwired, and that becomes our habit. So thank you for for reflecting that throughout the session today. And my question is, one thing that I learned today also was that the resilience induces generosity in a way. So I thought that was a very profound concept, and I wanted to understand a little bit more about that, and also understanding a lot more on the generosity itself. Is that the generosity for me is stronger when you have the cycle of people that you are associated with, that you are in love, not that you are associated with, your family, your friends, and people that you impact with, causes. Generosity tend to be stronger. So how do you take that to a more compassionate generosity? That is also something that I kind of want to learn more about in terms of generosity. Thank you.
I don't think I will do justice to your question, but I'd like to reflect through personal experience. Fear is something that I'm very interested and have been working on. You don't usually see on my face fear. You don't usually see that. But I have as much fear as anyone else. And it comes up during meditation. The way I approach that is, okay, in terms of concept, this is a visiting consciousness. Naturally, the mind is radiant, is shining, but is being clouded by visitors such as fear. Based on that concept, I try to be generous even towards fear. It's okay to feel fear, it's okay. It's not unique that there is fear in my heart. I try to reassure myself. In other words, I try to live with fear, not suppressing it, and not getting carried away by it. So acknowledging fear as it is constitutes middle path practice. Because on the one hand, you avoid suppressing it. On the other, you avoid indulging in that fear. What you can see in many people in the society is they use competitive mind and maybe pride in Burmese Makanjanese as a source of resilience. The source of resilience. You can see, okay, kids working hard in classrooms, people working hard to develop their business. You see? When I meet them, I tell them, okay, the world has a lot of problems. You all need to succeed. You all need to succeed. As a country in Myanmar, we have so much problem in healthcare, in communication, in education, in science, in research, in psychology. We we don't actually have a good teaching in clinical psychology in any university. We don't have good teaching and not to mention research in biochemistry. For us, many needs that we have to fulfill. So you all sitting here in front of me and beyond, you need to be successful maybe 20 times, 40 times, 60 times than you are now. Maybe 100 times. So that we can ease off the problem that we have now and pass on this country to the next generation in a better shape. If you look at the problem that way and see a sense of purpose, now a sense of compassion comes in. With compassion, fear starts loosening. Because fear as dosa, as doda, is the opposite of compassion. You look at the same thing, you look at problem, you look at suffering, you look at limitation, you look at shortcoming, you look at disappointment. You have two options. You're at a crossroad. You either become compassionate or you become angry. At a crossroad, you have to turn either way, left or right. That's reflected in the hippocampus, also brain. In Burmese, anetayu, meaning something that we don't like, something that we rather choose not to have. When we have to confront with that, two choices in front of us. We can't avoid. One of them is becoming compassionate, facing the pain, facing the pressure. The other is becoming emotionally vulnerable. So in Burmese, Gayuna Dodo, actually, that word is a wrong expression. They don't go together, compassion and anger. In Buddhist Abhidhamma, the psychological analysis is very clear. Okay, doda or anger, or hatred, fear is considered unskillful, agudo. Whereas compassion is considered skillful, wholesome, positive. So here, if we look at Makanjenda say, how would you say in English? Makanjenda say.
I'm not sure.
Makanjenda say ne choose.
Okay. Indignation.
Makanjenda sayအခက်ခဲကိုတခါတည်းဖြတ်ကျော် So it's a kind of pride, maybe misguided pride. Okay, we use that. Some people justify that it's good to have that. Some people say, but I disagree. It has a lot of side effects. So when you face difficulty, you're not giving it up because it hurts your pride. You fear that people would kind of look at you negatively, so You're not going to give it up. That sense of pride. Because of that, people think they have resilience. Look at the research of the post-traumatic disorder in the veterans. The best study is in the Gulf War, in Kuwait, in Iraq, like that. But it's everywhere. Everywhere is the same. You have to be man of the man. You know, a person who went to Falkland War, and part of the study, I think PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. A famous study in psychology, in trauma. You act strong. You appear strong. You're trying to remain strong. But deep down, actually, you're quite vulnerable. So fear. The Mother Nature wants you to act strong, to look strong, to appear strong. But the cosmic truth, the word used by Arthur Brooks, wants you to accept your limit and feel compassionate. And by doing so, you become strong. So resilience of being strong through compassion. And when you do that, you are really being generous towards yourself. You are healing at the same time. You are healing. In Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, the two famous fathers of Western psychology, everybody has childhood trauma. Everybody. Because of that trauma, we need to appear strong. We feel the need to appear strong. So to accept the reality of humility is against the mainstream of subconscious mind. So the Buddha said, at the beginning, his teaching was against the mainstream. His teaching was swimming upstream. Patitodakami, that's the word, the exact word that he used. Because most people would rather ignore suffering and limitation. Where the Buddha said, no, we have to confront this. And we will become stronger at the end. More compassionate, more connected. If we are more connected, we become stronger. The reason we compete is because we want approval and recognition of the one we compete with. That we are better than him, than her. That's the reason we compete. In the class, in business, in life, in social gathering. You see, it's a paradox. We want the recognition, the approval of the person we are trying to defeat. We never get that. We never get that. These are all the manifestation of fear. So by turning the energy of fear into the energy of compassion, we become resilient. Why is the mother so patient with her child? Day in and day out. Okay. When people bring kids, okay, when we have workshop with kids, after a day we feel so exhausted because we never have the experience of taking care of kids for a very long time. Just once a week. That's quite good enough for us. So I really admire parents. That's compassion. You already have that. To make it strong, you only need to expand that. So from intra-personal awareness, you extend it to interpersonal awareness. When you combine those two together, resilience and generosity, they blend in. Thank you.
Sayadaw, actually, just to sort of continue that train of thought, because you have mentioning about the next generation and also for the growth mindset. In a society where we are the parents, and in terms of for working, in terms of entrepreneurship and everything, being very busy, I was just thinking, how do you cultivate a growth mindset innately for the kids themselves, especially at an early age, when the parents are not around, and when there are so much, let's say, negative peer pressure, or in a society where instant gratification is very evident with social media, with everything happening. What would be your recommendation on how to foster that mindset continuously if the parents are, let's say, working, or they're not always evident with the kids 24 hours?
It's an eternal law that parents use, stick and carrot. It's an eternal law. If you do this, you achieve this, and I'm going to buy you this. A family in the UK who moved from here, both parents are doctors, and their son was 1 year old when they moved there. For a few years, every summer, I taught their son meditation and Buddhism and that. He went on to study business at uni, and he has been working in the city. Financially quite rewarding, but at the same time quite content. I saw them using this law, this eternal law of stick and carrot. They can afford him everything. But everything they give is a reward for hard work. For hard work. Not so much for the results, but for hard work. I would like to reflect some of the things that I have had with parents. As parent, when you are not with your children most of the time, when you go home, when you see their face, you feel some guilt. And how do you cope with your guilt? You buy them toys and presents. The kids don't actually have the need to receive, but you just have the need to give. Very unfortunate. A child who has got a toy, maybe a toddler, it takes time for them to form a relationship with that toy. It takes time. Just one toy. And now you feel bad being away for 2 or 3 days, maybe for a week on a business trip, you come back. You try to manage your guilt by buying a toy to for the child. Now the child has to make subconscious decision which toy is his. Before he could form a proper relationship with any of them, you already think buy him a third one. Grandparents, uncle, auntie. Now the room is full of toys. The child thinks, he hasn't got a toy. A professor, one of my meditation students in one of the Central European countries, one day urgently asked for an appointment, and he and his wife told me, Sayadaw, look, my son is only 6 years old and he knows how to tell a lie already. Really? What is he telling you? He said, I never bought him a toy. I show him the receipt of my credit card. All I bought him, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, how many toys I bought? And then professor, you are a scientist, an astronomer, like other Brooks was saying, an astronomer, they only study stars, they never dream of changing stars. As a scientist of happiness, you need to change yourself. An astronomer may not change the stars, but you need to change yourself. And you can still be objective in your study. So I told the professor, you are telling the truth. Your son is also telling the truth. No. How can that be? Both are saying contradictory things, and both are telling the truth. I said, your son is speaking from psychological perspective. You are talking about economic, on economic terms because you can show the receipt. But your son is saying, none of those toys belong to him. He hasn't got time to form a relationship with any of them, because it's just he was flooded. He has been flooded with toys. You place too much burden on his brain, asking him to decide which one you like, which one is yours. The grandma, because she bought a particular toy, she wants that, okay, this is your favorite toy. The grandpa would demand, it would have different demand. And aunt, would say, would contradict that, would assert her toy is the best. You are giving all sorts of trouble to the child. When this child grows up, he would have difficulty forming a relationship with anyone. And when I finished my explanation, the professor and his wife, they just happened to speak at the same time. We already made mistake. And what should we do? I said, okay, from today, stop buying any toy. Okay, play football with him. Okay, your child isn't asking for any of those things you give him. He's asking for your time, for your warmth, for your affection, for your attention. When he grows up, when he is at a certain age, you want to give him time. He wouldn't need that. You want to give attention? No, he would say no. You want to drive him to school? He would feel very embarrassed being driven to school. A mother in Dangji asked, oh no, now the school, the international school has moved to a new campus. Now it's quite far from us. What we're going to do? Drive your daughter to the school. In a few years' time, she would say no, even if you want to. Yeah. Treasure the time that you have with your children. And that. That's one thing that I'd like to share with parents today. The other thing is to reflect on belief and focus that we have seen in the video clip. Whether you believe that your child can work through anything, if there is right strategy, right support, right environment. If you believe so, you are in growth mindset. But if you ignore that, unknowingly, you might drift into a fixed mindset. Because you are not stressing the importance of effort. Then what about focus? Do you always look at the results and not how your child got there? If you connect with the results, with their hard work, you try to praise them for their hard work, as you can see over there in the film. That's going to help them to be in a growth mindset. The Buddha, he recalled many of his past lives, more than 500 of them, just to show how he put in so much effort to be there, and to earn the title Buddha. And he gave credit to many people, to his parents, to his family members, to his assistants, to many people. Many people, he gave credit to them. Meaning he was very generous towards them. If your child knows that you don't mind them making mistakes, instead you focus on them learning from mistakes, then they have less fear. No one deliberately makes mistakes. But when we make, and our parents are really harsh on us, now whenever we make more mistakes, we try to hide from them. We are afraid that they would give us a hard time, a double penalty. So when you are being supportive, understanding, kind, when your child makes mistake, you go through that lesson, you go through how they do their maths, how they do their English, their science, and it's okay that you made this mistake. This is how we learn. If you reassure them, you see, you are going to be quite close towards them. You say, you don't get even this? You make mistake with this? No, they don't want to be with you, even though you are their parents. Sometimes when they get older, when you call them, Mom, I'm sorry, I don't have much time. They hang up. That is how we translate this into English. That's a child can tolerate being in pain, being in discomfort, physical discomfort sitting here. But they can't tolerate the pain in their ears. It's too much. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but that's all the best I can do. Learn today. What have you learned today? Can you tell me? You have been with me in Dangji. He went to Dangji to meditate with me, so.
I think for me, one of the key reflections about mudita that I kind of bring with me, so is really thinking about mindfulness, happiness, and really thinking about all the elements that go into something, right? I like the idea of thinking that we are probably a little bit smaller, and that somehow brings more peace in a way.
Thank you. Somebody asked me recently how he could start a growth mindset in his company. I said, okay, I suggest that you start somewhere safe. You go back to maybe last year, maybe at the time when the count is already closed. And that part is already done. You go back there and ask your staff to reflect what they have learned from the experiences, especially the mistakes, the difficulties. They don't have pressure reflecting on that. They don't have fear. And you make sure that you want them to grow through mistakes, that you yourself want to grow through mistakes. That is why you do this exercise. We have so much fear around and about making mistakes because we don't want to look bad in people's eyes. Anything more? Okay, maybe Kid, we can conclude now, whatever you want to say. If there isn't anything, I'd like to do a short blessing and we conclude. Bhavatu Tapa Mengalan Rakantu Tapa Devata Tapa Bodha Nubhavena Tadantu Kipavantu Te Bhavatu Tapa Mengalan Rakantu Tapa Devata Tapa Dhamma Nubhavena Tadantu Kipavantu Te Bhavatu Tapa Mengalan Rakantu Tapa Devata Tapa Thanga Nubhavena Tadantu Kipavantu Te. May all of you be well and happy. May all of you have resilience, strength, generosity, positive attitudes to grow stronger and stronger so that you serve more and more people through your business, through your individual effort. Baikin yang kwa chama chana chapasi, kachi tomba. ချိုးလွှမ်းနိုင်ကြပါစေကိုယ်တွင်ကိုယ်ပအိမ်တွင်အိမ်ပပြည်တွင်ပြည်ပကြဲကြဲပြန့်ပြန့်သာသနာပြုနိုင်ကြတဲ့ပါရမီရှင်များဖြစ်ကြပါစေသာဓုသာ